The guy that I would try to get number one, though, is Jamar Chase, because Chase has, for the most part, struggled. He's been dealing with a lot of contract stuff, so people are a little bit lower on him than they usually are. Try to get him now because he's not going to put up performances like 7.5 moving forward. Hurts has struggled this season relative to expectations, but I do feel that he's still going to have value running the ball. I do feel that this team is going to get better, and I do think this is a great opportunity to try to take advantage of Jalen Hurts' market while it's still low.
1.5 yards per play. Burrow fires, caught, chase. They're trying to chase him down, and they cannot. Touchdown.
They're not firing to start this drive. They're going deep, and it's caught. What a play to A.J. Brown with Carson defending.
The season, Carson's
Drop back. Jalen looking around, surveying 3 or 4 times. Steps up and fires. And it's caught for the touchdown.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Fantasy Football 201. In today's video, we are going to do an in-depth look at final trades that you can make to help improve your roster and win a fantasy football championship. The trade deadline is approaching, and for a lot of leagues, the trade deadline starts this week. So in this video, I'm going to do an in-depth look at quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends to look at everyone's schedule, remaining rest of season, and how I rank the top 20 at each of these positions. So if you are interested in more content like this, please subscribe to the channel, like my video, and drop a comment below. I reply to all commenters, as you can see in my channel. So if you have any questions about your roster and you have any things that you want to ask me and get direct feedback on, I'm going to reply to you. So please take advantage of that with this small channel and subscribe to it. So as an orientation for this video, we're going to go through the top 20 rest of season in my rankings. I'm going to be looking at both how they're ranking currently, team situations, and then also look at strength of schedule the rest of the way. So I'll be showing you that by each position and then talk buy and sell candidates from that list to help guide you in your trade discussions that you may have with your other league mates and how you can improve your team to maybe take advantage of these last few weeks before you get to the championship game. So, and for those of you that are watching my videos, I'm going to make 2 videos this weekend. On Saturday, I'm going to release a start-sit video that is going to talk the under 40% rostered start-sit decisions, as I've done before. We've had a couple of big hits from them, as you can see by going back and looking at my channel. Some picks that really turned out well for some guys. And then we're also going to look at the fan mailbag questions. We have a couple questions from commenters that I will feature in the video. So if you have any questions and you want to be featured on the show, then drop a comment and I will answer it for the video coming out on Saturday. And then Sunday, we are going to go live again. So tell all your friends, tell all your enemies if you want to. I don't know how you feel about them, but let everybody know that we're going to go live Sunday morning before the games start. So I want to get to 600 subscribers this weekend, so please spread the news to your friends, and let's all join in on this live video on Sunday to make this a forum based around your questions to help you win a fantasy football championship. All right, so we will start with the quarterback position. So I have a graphic displayed here that shows my ranking of the top 20 quarterbacks rest of season. So in this graph, you can look at how they're currently ranked, which is the second column. And then the column next to that is the strength of schedule remaining. So if you have a strength of schedule of 1, that is a easy schedule. If you have 32, you have the hardest schedule. And that was what led into my decision of why Lamar Jackson, despite being the number 1 overall quarterback right now, and by a pretty wide margin, he's at least 40 points ahead of Baker Mayfield in the total points scored this season, is because his strength of schedule is very difficult to close the season. Lamar Jackson has some tough matchups coming up, to include Pittsburgh twice, he gets Houston, and then he gets Philadelphia, which is an improving defense. He also has the Chargers in there as well among these games closed this season, as well as a bye. So consider all this. Jalen Hurts has already had his bye. He also has a much easier strength of schedule the rest of the way when he gets Washington twice on defense, which, improving, but not anything world beating. He gets Dallas in the championship game, which we just saw what they did to them last week. So all of this is, and they get Carolina in there as well. So there's a lot of great matchups for Jalen Hurts, and that's why, to me, especially with how hot he is right now, he is the number one quarterback rest of the way for me on my board. Number 3 is Josh Allen. Josh Allen has a difficult strength of schedule, and ranking 5th this year, you may be a little bit disappointed relative to where you took him in the drafts, but I do think we're going to see some better performances from him in the cold weather in Buffalo. We may see him rely a little more on his legs than he has in some games this season. So I think we're going to see Josh Allen still be very effective as usual. I like him to bump up into the number 3 position rest of the way. Joe Burrow is the 4th ranked quarterback to me. Really hot right now, but he has another tough strength of schedule. And for me personally, I lean the running quarterback when there's a very close call, and Josh Allen just has more rushing upside than Joe Burrow, so that is why he ranks ahead of me. Then number 5 is Kyler Murray. So Kyler Murray, nice. He's got an okay strength of schedule, but after he gets past this bye, he's got some good matchups, and I think this offense is really starting to get in sync as well. So they've got in the championship game, they have the Los Angeles Rams, which is a great matchup for terms of pass catching. I'll talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. later in this video, but I think that this all sets up well for Kyler Murray to be a great quarterback rest of the way. He's got Seattle twice in there as well, which is a very beatable defense. I think he is a top 5 quarterback. So just after him is Jaden Daniels, and I went with Murray over Daniels just simply because we've seen Murray in this situation before. Jaden Daniels, he's got a little bit easier of a matchup than Kyler Murray, but for me personally, I'm going to go with the experienced quarterback in these situations. We haven't really seen Jaden Daniels, how he plays in the cold, etc. So just different things to consider there. So I'm going to go Murray over Daniels. And then to me, after these top 6, there's a pretty clear drop off at quarterback. Baker Mayfield would be the number 7. And I think that he's definitely the top of this next list of B-tier quarterbacks. He's got a great strength of schedule. He's getting all his receivers, or he's getting Mike Evans back healthy. So I think that when Evans is back, coming out of this bye, especially in the playoffs, they have a pretty nice schedule. So I think Baker Mayfield is a great quarterback to have. They've got Dallas and Carolina in the final 2 games of the playoff season. Really like him as a buy low candidate, which I will kind of run through the buys and sells for all these players I've talked about in the top 20, but specifically go over buys and sells at the end of this quarterback discussion. So the next one on my list is Jordan Love, and I think this one is really kind of dependent on your record. You can make a case to sell him because he's got the hardest strength of schedule the rest of the way, but he does have a nice fantasy schedule to close in the playoffs. So if you're in a position where you need to rack up some wins, I think he's a good trade away candidate. But if you're somebody that's sitting pretty right now, you're going to make the playoffs, Jordan Love could be a real sleeper for you to grab here in this trade deadline window. So this one's record dependent, but I have Love ranked as my 8th quarterback to close the season. The next 2 are maybe kind of surprising on this list, but these are entirely matchup plays, and why I have Justin Herbert and Russell Wilson, believe it or not, in the top 10 rounding out this list. They have the number 5 and number 4 strength of schedule remaining, respectively, for Herbert and Wilson. And although they haven't been great the whole season, they've both been playing better, and they get some great matchups. So these are excellent trade for candidates because of the strength of schedule, and I have them in my top 10 as quarterbacks remaining rest of the way. Next is Brock Purdy, and Purdy is a good sell candidate to me because he has overachieved relatively. Getting Christian McCaffrey back, we could see a little bit more of reliance on him, less needed for Purdy. And although I think it would be good to keep him, and he's obviously still a top 12 quarterback based on my ranking, I think that we've seen some down weeks from some quarterbacks in week in week 10 that are generally better as a whole than Brock Purdy, in my opinion. So I think that if you can make a trade, this may be a good opportunity to do it in a game which Purdy played pretty well. Um, but again, consider that it wouldn't be bad to keep him either. Next is Bo Nix. He's got a great strength of schedule rest of the way. And this is another one that you can go back and forth on, in that, he's a rookie and he's got his bye week. He could be a sell candidate, but he's also an excellent buy candidate too, based on his strength of schedule and the team improving offensively over the last couple weeks. Kirk Cousins is number 13. He's got a great fantasy playoff schedule that includes the Giants, the Vegas Raiders, I believe, and the Washington Commanders. I will double check that real quick. But he's got a great playoff schedule, and I think Kirk Cousins is somebody that you can definitely buy low on, especially in 2 QB leagues. And yes, he's got Vegas week 15, the Giants in week 16, and then the Commanders week 17. So great playoff schedule. Once he gets past Denver this upcoming week, he's got a nice schedule the rest of the way after his bye. Then we have Stroud and Mahomes. So I want to talk about these two together because they were drafted highly, and they are, in a sense, you can make an argument that they will be getting better. In Stroud's case, Nico Collins is coming back. In Mahomes' case, the offense is playing a little bit better, and maybe they can open the field up more with Hopkins. But I think these are guys that I would be selling for everybody ranked ahead of them because of name value and just what we've seen this season. I think that you can get more out of the name value than what you will probably get on the field. So that's why I have them ranked 14th and 15th respectively. Then I have Jared Goff. Obviously he's not a great option, and he's really streamable by the matchup. This is a great week to play him against Jacksonville, for example. But I don't like him necessarily as a quarterback that you want to rely upon long term. Then we have another drop off of guys that have potential, but have relatively struggled with consistency throughout the season. Matt Stafford, he's got a tough strength of schedule, but I do trust him more over this next player, Geno Smith, who also has a tough playoff schedule. Tua has a better schedule than both of them, respectively, but he's already been hurt once this season. He's got a well-documented reputation of playing poorly in the cold, and he has not spread the field very well since he's been back. So he's 19 to me. And then Aaron Rodgers is number 20, rounding out this list. But I want to highlight the sleeper among these quarterbacks, which this is really gross, and I talked about it in my last video. But Will Levis has the third best strength of schedule the rest of the way. And if you want to make an argument for somebody that we're not talking about who could be a playoff sleeper for you, it's Will Levis. So, and yes, I don't put him in my top 20 because for all we know, he may do something really stupid that costs him his job over the next few weeks before we even get to the playoffs. But this schedule lining up for him is very juicy. And I think that Will Levis would not surprise me at all if he's somebody that vaults his way into top 10 performances certain weeks and is an effective streaming option. So just keep an eye out for him because he's somebody worth monitoring. So to recap everything, who are my buys and sells? My buys are Jalen Hurts because he's got a great strength of schedule. And I think if you could sell Lamar Jackson for Hurts, I would do that. The only case I would sell Lamar. Herbert and Wilson both have great strength of schedules the rest of the way. You can get good to flip somebody off a bad game. You could get Baker Mayfield and Kirk Cousins at a discounted price right now, as well as Jared Goff if you want to play the stream game for week 11. But Baker and Cousins are better options longer term. And then if you're just looking at this list of guys currently outside the top 20 who I think will jump back into it, you can make an argument to buy Stafford and Tua, and you can get them at pretty low prices. This is only really for the 2 quarterback leagues, though. Sell candidates, Burrow is a sell candidate off of how he's played lately based on, he's not a great rushing quarterback, but this is if you are getting Hurts, Allen, or Lamar, which, you probably can't get Hurts or Lamar for him, but Josh Allen is a possible thing you might be able to spend there. Brock Purdy, as I've already talked about, you could try to flip him off some good performances for one of these quarterbacks that's underachieved or has a great strength of schedule. I would be trying to sell Darnold I think he's going to drop out of the top 20. He's got a very difficult strength of schedule as well. And then Mahomes off the name value. And Derek Carr, who had a good week 10, I do not think will be consistent enough to stay in the top 20 rest of the way. And if you're wondering who to buy or sell, just go off the ranking in my list. That's how I would recommend buying or selling. So if you're asking yourself, hey, like, should I sell Baker Mayfield to get Jaden Daniels? And the answer to that is yes. But if it's going to be Baker Mayfield or Justin Herbert, then I would keep Baker Mayfield. Running backs. So this is my list of running backs rest of season. So my number one on this list is Saquon. Currently, Derrick Henry's number one, but much like Lamar, they've got a tough schedule the rest of the way. So I like Saquon and Christian McCaffrey to jump over Derrick Henry in this ranking rest of season. So I'm going to go Saquon number one because of a better strength of schedule and generally less mouths to feed in the offense. It's Saquon, A.J. Brown, and that's pretty much it in terms of the flex options on that team. So I like Saquon to jump up to number one. Christian McCaffrey is number two for me. So in terms of, are you going to sell Derrick Henry because of this tough playoff schedule? You're not going to do that unless you're getting Saquon or CMC. And in both those cases, I would trade Derrick Henry. But Derrick Henry is kind of schedule proof in the sense that, you're going to start him every single week. You just maybe aren't expecting the amazing games, maybe something closer to 20 points instead of 35. But all that being said, if you can get Saquon or CMC for Derrick Henry, I would do that. Next is Breece Hall, who's been very disappointing this season relatively, but he's still ranked number 8th overall on the season, which is not that bad considering his performance inconsistency at times. But he has an incredible schedule the rest of the way, including the playoff schedule, which is number 1 for running backs. So that is why he is number 4 on this list for me. His playoff schedule, we'll go through it weeks 15 to 17. Jacksonville, the Rams, and Buffalo, which are all excellent matchups for running backs. So, and mixed in there are the Colts next week. Then they've got Seattle, which has struggled against the run. This is just, in general, a great schedule the rest of the way for Breece Hall. And he's number 4 on my list. Bijan is number 5, and this is very close between Breece, but Bijan to me, just because of the strength of schedule, is going to drop a little bit more for me on this list. Bijan gets the Washington Commanders in week 17, which is a improving defense, but they also have Minnesota and the Chargers mixed in there weeks 13 to 14 as well. So that's the thing that's a little concerning to me with him, is that week 13 to 14 stretch, but Bijan's still an excellent play rest of the season. Then you get into, so that's the elite 5 to me. Then you get into the next group of 3 players, which are almost like, if that was tier 1A, this is tier 2A. They're all A tier, but these ones are a little bit down a peg. Kyren Williams, then James Conner, then Alvin Kamara. And Kyren and Conner are both ahead of Kamara because of the strength of schedule for me. But I do think that Alvin Kamara is also going to be very effective despite the strength of schedule because they need to rely on him in passing. And if you're in a full PPR league, this probably vaults Kamara to arguably be number 6 on this list. But to me, if you're looking at the half format, he kind of falls into more of that like 8 range to me. Next is Gibbs and Montgomery at 9 and 10. And they're both excellent running backs, but I just think their value is going to be capped by each other. They do have an excellent strength of schedule the rest of the way, but I just like those other 8 more because I know that those guys are going to be locked in as clear number 1 options. Then it's Chase Brown, who's vaulted his way up to the top and now has control of that Bengals backfield. I've been talking about him as a buy low candidate all year, and now it's reaping off. So if you have Chase Brown, you're locked and loaded with an RB1 rest of season. Then to me, it is Devon Achane. I have Achane just slightly below Chase Brown because of the health concerns. And yes, the points per game is incredible, but I really want to see how this Dolphins team does in cold weather. They got to go to Lambeau later. So that'll be interesting. And then health issues are more concerning for me with Achane. So that's why he falls a little bit on that list for me. Then you have some other guys that are excellent options. I go Jonathan Taylor, James Cook, and Joe Mixon. And this is an arguably thing between all of them. But to me, I go Taylor next. Um, then I go Cook with the difficult strength of schedule, then Joe Mixon. And that's because I think that Taylor as a whole has been underappreciated because he's not really been getting the touchdowns that we've been expecting. But I suspect more of that will happen as the season progresses. Things will open up for him. Cook has a tough strength of schedule. Then Mixon to me is a little bit lower on this list just with the struggles of the Houston line. And they still have some issues they got to sort out there. So that's why Mixon to me is 15. Then you go Jacobs and Aaron Jones. And these are both excellent buy low candidates for me because Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones have both been on the season top 20 running backs, but have not had a lot of touchdowns. So there's a real world where both of these guys can get more touchdowns as the season goes along. Jones only has 2 on the season and Jacobs only has 3. So because of that, these are both excellent buy low candidates for positive touchdown regression that's expected for these players. Next on this list for me is Kenneth Walker. He's dropped a little bit in terms of his health, and he's just kind of below these other guys because I'm just not really sure what their reliance on the run is going to be with the team expected to be trailing in a lot of their games. And then Chuba Hubbard to me is 19. So Chuba has been an excellent story this season, a great late draft addition. He's number 6 on the year, but that's a little bit skewed because he hasn't had his bye week yet. And then additionally, we've got the Jonathan Brooks equation factored in. So I think this is a great time to sell Chuba Hubbard, especially off of this contract extension. It really diminishes the thoughts that Brooks could take over the backfield, but we could see more of a split because Brooks is a very talented running back who would have been probably a first round draft pick had he not torn his ACL. So I'm just saying that I think Chuba Hubbard, relative to this list, will drop. He's still excellent to start weekly, and he will be a great asset for you to hold on to. But I think if you really want to capitalize on his value with anybody higher on him in this list, I would be trying to do that. Then Ramondre Stevenson, who I've dogged this guy a lot this season, and I don't like his efficiency. I don't like the team struggles, but you can't deny the fact that this guy has been getting tons of volume this season, and he gets a great strength of schedule. So if you got him, I think that he would be a good play for you, and he goes into the top 20. My sleeper the rest of the way is Tyrone Tracy. And for me, Tracy is someone who he's got a tough playoff schedule, but the stretch from week 12 to 14 is excellent. And he could be a real difference maker for you to buy that could help you get to the playoffs. He gets Tampa Bay week 12, Dallas week 13, and New Orleans week 14, which are all excellent matchups for running backs. So if you want to take a shot on somebody that probably won't cost you a lot, but will still be great value, I would take a look at Tyrone Tracy to help you get into the playoffs with his schedule. So it's a recap. The buy candidates, CMC and Saquon, if you're going to trade Derrick Henry to get the number 2 running back rest of the way. Breece Hall, number 1 playoff strength of schedule. All the guys that have had down weeks recently, so I'm talking the Kyron Williams, the Jonathan Taylors, those guys are good with their strength of schedule, especially, and they're both top 15 players to me rest of the way. Jacobs and Jones because of touchdown regression, and then Tyrone Tracy. And then some other names to look at as well. Bucky Irving, I think you can get him at a good value with his role expected to increase in passing. Tampa Bay has the number 1 strength of schedule for running backs rest of the way. So if you want to take advantage of somebody that you can buy that I think will give you the value that you could get, I would go with Irving. I would not go with White. He's more of a sell candidate off of the strength of schedule because he's struggled at times when he hasn't been able to get the pass catching volume. So now with Evans back, I think White may take a hit in that, and it's more Irving that will be the benefactor. So I would trade for Irving, would sell White. Spears on the Tennessee Titans has an increasing role. Since he's healthy again and Tony Pollard is dealing with issues, last week the split was 9 carries for Tony Pollard and 7 for Tajay Spears. So I think Spears' role will increase as the season goes along. And they have an all right schedule too the rest of the way. So keep an eye out for him. And then if you want to go with volume, Rico Dowdle and Alexander Madison are both great buys. Yes, their teams are struggling, but they're they are the RB1s on their team, and they are going to get more work. That I think if you want to take advantage of two guys that are pretty cheap, you could get a startable asset with them, especially with the bye weeks coming up that will deplete you a lot of these great players. The sell candidates, Derrick Henry. If you're only going to get CMC or Saquon, otherwise hold Derrick Henry. Chuba Hubbard. Tough schedules the rest of the way are Chase Brown and James Cook. So if you could trade up on this list, I would recommend doing that with those two. Najee Harris has the hardest strength of schedule the rest of the way. So if you could trade him, I would recommend doing that. I already talked Rachaad White. They have the best strength of schedule, but his role to me is going to be in more question with Mike Evans coming back. Tony Pollard, as I mentioned, the opposite of Spears. I think his role will decrease, and you could sell him for value that could be higher on this list. I would do that. And then two guys currently in the top 20 that have tough strength of schedules the rest of the way I'd be trying to sell are DeAndre Swift and J.K. Dobbins. I think both those guys are good sell candidates, and with their strength of schedule, I don't see them finishing top 20 rest of the way. All right, so now we will move to the wide receivers. And very similarly to the theme, I really am paying attention to the strength of schedule with these guys. So Jamar Chase, excellent. He's been far and away the number one wide receiver on the season. But I like Justin Jefferson more as my wide receiver to close the season. This is because Jamar Chase in the Fantasy Football Championship gets Patrick Surtain and the Denver Broncos, but Justin Jefferson gets the Green Bay Packers. And the week before that, he gets the Seattle Seahawks. So in terms of these two games, when you're in your semifinals and championships, he's got two excellent matchups for wide receivers. So Justin Jefferson, to me, vaults over Jamar Chase as the number one wide receiver rest of the way. And Chase, to me, is number two because that Surtain game, Surtain is excellent, and Jamar Chase, he's excellent too. So you're not by any means sitting him, but I think that Jefferson could be the one that gives you a better performance than Jamar Chase would in this spot. Next, and I was very close to considering this player over Jamar Chase because of the strength of schedule. A.J. Brown is number 3 for me. He's got the number 5 strength of schedule the rest of the way. Jalen Hurts playing well. I think A.J. Brown is a number 3 wide receiver for me on this list. And these three are pretty clearly, to me, the top 3 the rest of the way. And there's been a lot of flux with wide receivers. So some of the names that you'll see on this list are going to be a little bit lower than you may have drafted them. So you're going to need to change your expectations with some of these players. Amon-Ra St. Brown, to me, is 4. The consistency is excellent. You don't love the strength of schedule at 22, but I think this guy is so consistent, you got to feel confident starting him every week. Garrett Wilson, to me, dips a little bit from his current ranking of 3 to number 5, just because of the target volume shifting a little bit more towards Devontae Adams in recent weeks, but he's still top 5 for me. Then it's Malik Nabers. And this is an excellent buy low candidate with some weeks that he struggled because he's still getting the targets. And coming off of this bye, he's got a very nice schedule coming up rest of the way. Malik Nabers, after this bye, gets Tampa Bay, which is a very porous pass defense. Then he gets Dallas, which is getting eviscerated. Then he gets the New Orleans Saints, just lost Marcus Lattimore. And then he gets the Baltimore Ravens. So, and then after that, he gets the Atlanta Falcons and the Indianapolis Colts. So it's really hard to find a schedule better than this. In fact, it's number 2 strength of schedule rest of the way. So if you could buy Malik Nabers in this last week during his bye week, I would be all over doing that. This is an excellent buy low candidate for me. Then on this list is Drake London. He's got a nice playoff schedule, a tough mid-season, or I guess for lack of better words, end of the regular season schedule of fantasy, but he's got a great playoff schedule. Then I go Nico Collins at number 8. Little concerned about his hamstring injury, but he's going to be clearly the number 1 receiver, and we've already seen him be excellent in the games that he's played this season. And then after that, to me, is Puka Nacua. He's getting a great target volume, but he's got a tough strength of schedule the rest of the way, and it gets harder in the fantasy football playoffs. So Puka, to me, is number 9. And then jumping up in this list with the number 1 strength of schedule the rest of the way, George Pickens. George Pickens has Russell Wilson, both of them number 10 on this list for their positions. But you look at George Pickens' schedule the rest of the way, and it's pretty nice. Let me just get his schedule pulled up real quick. But you really like what George Pickens has done in recent weeks, and then the schedule is the number 1 the rest of the way in the fantasy football playoffs to close the season and in the fantasy football playoffs. He gets Baltimore twice, which has been a porous pass defense. He gets Cincinnati twice, which, Cincinnati's in week 18, but some leagues are still playing week 18. He gets Philadelphia, which has, they've gotten better, but they're nothing to really be concerned about. And then Cleveland, which has also been a very porous pass defense too. So they get all their divisional opponents, which means they're going to be aggressive, and Pickens is the best receiver. This is excellent to me. He's a top 10 receiver rest of the way and a great buy low candidate. Then the next on this list to me is Marvin Harrison Jr. And this is another good buy candidate off the sense that he's got another great strength of schedule. And I think he will get more involved as the season goes along. And we will see kind of a return to what we thought we were getting with him. So he's a good buy low candidate to me. His quarterback is playing well. And then closing out this list of these 3, Pickens, Harrison, and Sutton, Cortland Sutton of the Broncos, are all excellent buy low candidates. Cortland Sutton has a good strength of schedule the rest of the way. Bo Nix is playing well. He does have the bye mixed in, so that kind of drops him a little bit lower to me on this list. But Cortland Sutton rounds out the top 12 and is a wide receiver 1 the rest of the way. Then you have a bit of a drop off to this next tier of guys, which are specifically Tyreek Hill and Mike Evans. I love the player, but I have significant questions with both of them. Hill has just not been spreading the field since Tua has come back, and he has the hardest strength of schedule the rest of the way. So would you sell Tyreek Hill to get a George Pickens? I would. And as much as I hate saying that, I would do that trade. Mike Evans is 14. I put him slightly below Hill because, hamstring injuries, Evans is old, re-injury concerns are always there. Then I have Terry McLaurin. And you can make an argument that McLaurin could be above both of these guys, but he's really benefited from a positive touchdown regression where he's gotten a lot of touchdowns despite lack of reception. So that is a little bit concerning to me that you could see a regression of his numbers because of that. Then you have Cooper Kupp, tough strength of schedule, but hyper-targeted by Matt Stafford. He rounds out the top 16. And then you kind of fall into the next tier of where you got Jaden Reed. Inconsistency is a little bit concerning with him. And then you have CeeDee Lamb at 18. So to me, Lamb is you love the strength of schedule. He's number 10 in strength of schedule, but that quarterback play is brutal for them. So I think if you had the opportunity to get any of these guys over him on the list, I would still do that. Then you have Zay Flowers. I think this is a good sell candidate off the premise that, Deontay Johnson is getting integrated. Plus, they have a harder strength of schedule. Flowers is still top 20 to me, but if you can upgrade to one of these guys, I would do that. And then number 20 on this list is Calvin Ridley. Excellent schedule the rest of the way, and this is excellent for him. So if you have the chance to, Calvin Ridley has been frustrating all season for the managers that have held on to him, but he's really reaping the benefits now. And there's a real argument that he could be even higher on this list and even into the top 15. His schedule the rest of the way, and keep in mind, he's already had his bye. He gets Minnesota next week. That's probably their toughest matchup. Then they get Houston, Washington, Jacksonville, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Jacksonville. So specifically week 14 to 17 is incredible. Jacksonville twice, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis. That's as good as you can get for that stretch of the week before the playoffs and the fantasy playoffs. So he is in the top 20 for me, and you can make an argument that he's even higher than that. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of a bonus and talk 5 sleepers to give you a 25 of my top wide receivers the rest of the way. So Jawan Jennings, and this is because we've already seen him be very successful this season. He doesn't have a great strength of schedule necessarily, but at the same time, he looks to be the number one wide receiver on this team, especially if Deebo Samuel is going to continue to be plagued with injury. The Seattle wide receivers are both intriguing, and this JSN and DK Metcalf. I think that they've got a tough schedule, but I suspect Geno Smith is going to be throwing a lot, and I think both of them will be worthy of top 25 performances the rest of the way. And then two sleepers that have great strength of schedules. First, I'm going to talk Charles Tillman, who has the number 14, or sorry, Cedric Tillman. Charles Tillman, I think, was a defensive player from back in the day. That's my bad. But Cedric Tillman has the 14th strength of schedule, has multiple performances over the last week, over, I believe, 19 fantasy points in each of his last several games. So he is a great sleeper to buy. And then Xavier Legette, who I've already talked about a lot, he gets the number 6 strength of schedule the rest of the way. I suspect Bryce Young and the Panthers crew are going to be throwing it often his way. Good pickup there. So in summary, the ones you want to buy, Jefferson, if you want to trade Chase, and if you're getting Jefferson and a startable running back for Chase, it's a tough call, but I would do it. The strength of schedule favors guys like Malik Neighbors, George Pickens, Marvin Harrison Jr., Cortland Sutton. So those are all great buy candidates. I think guys that can enter this list, as I've mentioned, like the Jaden Reeds, the Jawan Jennings, the Xavier Legettes, the Lad McConkey, who has a top 10 strength of schedule the rest of the way. Those are all great buy candidates. And then you could put in a very cheap offer for these players, but the Bears wide receivers, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, and Keenan Allen, all those guys are struggling, and I do not really like them as startable players right now. But there is an argument that the coach can get one of them more involved, and they have a great strength of schedule there, which means that these teams, their opponents are good against the run, poor against the pass, which sets up well for these receivers to do better. So because of that, you could put in a cheap offer on these Bears receivers, and I think they would be good buys. The sells, Chase, if you could get Jefferson, but that's the only case I would do that, and you really got to get a haul. I think the ones that are currently top 20 that you could sell for elite players like Terry McLaurin, Darnell Mooney, those are both guys that I think I could sell and get one of these top 10 guys that I've talked about. I think there's some guys that you could sell for Nico Collins, and that would be a good deal for you, for example. Zay Flowers. I think his target, much like as I've talked about earlier, I think his targets could go down with the integration of Deontay Johnson and some tougher matchups. Brian Thomas Jr., in redraft leagues, I'd be trying to sell him. I like him in Dynasty, but if you're looking at redraft or non-keeper leagues, the quarterback play is really going to limit his value, and I see him falling fast out of the top 20. And then other strength of schedule challenges are DeAndre Hopkins for the Chiefs, who have a tough strength of schedule, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And then Demario Douglas also has a tough schedule with the New England Patriots. Tight ends. So these are the top 20 tight ends that I have rest of season on my rankings. Number one, and these top 3 are in a tier of their own, the elite guys. Travis Kelce is number 1 for me, then Brock Bowers, then George Kittle. And Bowers, everything looks great. I just put Kelce slightly above him because the targets the last couple weeks for this guy has been out of this world. I've been wrong about him. I thought he was going to have a decline this season, especially how he looked early on, but he's just going off right now, and he also does not have a bye week, so that helps him. But 12, 16, and 12 targets the last 3 weeks, all over 20 full PPR points. You can't do any better than Travis Kelce right now. But Bowers is a very close second with some upside, but that quarterback play is concerning to me. Then George Kittle is third to me because now with McCaffrey back, some of the wide receivers getting healthy, I think we could see some target decrease for him. Trey McBride is a great buy for me as well. No touchdowns this season, but number 4 on the season. So this is a great, and then he's also got a great strength of schedule. He is a great buy low candidate. Cade Otton is number 5. So, and he had a down week, but again, another great buy candidate off of his bye week, as I talked about in the last video, because he has the number 4 strength of schedule, and he's going to still be involved. He's going to be the number 2 pass catching option for, Baker Mayfield with the top 10 schedule for pass catchers rest of the way. Cade Otton is number 5 on this list for me. So yes, all the guys below him I would sell to get Cade Otton. Sounds crazy, but that's how I feel about it. Then you have the TJ Hawkinson to me. And I think this is definitely a dart throw because he has not played a lot this season, but I think there's a good chance you could see him involved to the degree that you're seeing McBride and Otton involved. That's why he's number 6. Then, to me, the next tier are these next 2 players, which they have quarterback issues, but they get a lot of volume. And that because of that, they're top 10 for me, David Njoku and Evan Ingram. Njoku especially has a good schedule, so that's those 2 guys are also good buy low candidates off of poor performances in their last game that I think will be very consistent plays for you, albeit they may not have a lot of high-end upside. Kyle Pitts, to me, rounds out this next group of guys that have question marks, which is, you always have question marks about Kyle Pitts. And then Mark Andrews, number 10 on my list, and he's been playing well. He's an excellent sell candidate too, because he's got the hardest strength of schedule the rest of the way. And everything I said about Zay Flowers and targets also applies to Mark Andrews. Then we have Tucker Kraft at the number 11 position. He's got a tough strength of schedule, but he's had some good games this season. So I like him to still finish top 12. And then this next group of my question mark guys, Laporta and Kincaid. And the reason I rank them both behind Kraft is because they're both dealing with injuries right now. And I'm not really sure how quickly they're going to be back to playing again. But they both are still, that 12-13 fringe range for me. So they're rosterable, but they've got some question marks for me. And then you kind of get into this tier of guys that are gross, but you are really looking for, consistency. And I think Ferguson and Zach Ertz are both guys that they're getting targets that could make them consistent plays for you. So I would go with Ferguson first because, I think that he's probably the number 2 wide receiver on this Cowboys team. Maybe, Cooper Rush or Trey Lance will be passing a short to him. And then Zach Ertz, he's gross play, but he does get targets and he does give you a consistent enough floor. But the 2 sleepers here at the tight end are Will Disley and Jatavion Sanders. Will Disley has the number 1 strength of schedule the rest of the way for tight ends. So if you are really hurting for guys, you got to buy a week. Will Disley is going to be one of the best pickups you could make if he's out there. I think he's a great stream for this week. And then Jatavion Sanders is a buy right now, but he's got the number 5 schedule the rest of the way. And the Panthers could be looking to him as their number 2 pass catcher because, Thielen's not getting healthy. They've traded away some receivers. So Jatavion Sanders is very interesting to me. And then you kind of get into the tier of I don't really want to play these guys. They don't really have a lot of upside, but worst case scenario, they're probably the best thing out there. And that's Dallas Goedert, Pat Freiermuth, and Hunter Henry. And then my honorable mention is Taysom Hill. And I am an anti-Taysom Hill person because anytime you think he can have a good game, he disappoints. And then you're like, oh, look, he's just scored 25 points. Let me put him in his lineup. 1 point, 0 points. Oh, and then a couple weeks later, he'll go off for 20. This guy is the most inconsistent fantasy player out there. But there's a real argument to be made for him right now because they have tons of injuries at their skill position players. And there's a real chance that Taysom Hill could give you some excellent numbers out of a position that has typically been struggling just simply because of necessity on this team. I'm personally not playing that game, but I can understand the argument to wanting to play him, and he could be a sleeper. So who are the buys at tight end? Trey McBride and Cade Otton are both top 5 guys. Rest of the way, that their numbers to me will get even better. Volume plays of David Njoku and Evan Ingram. And then the sneakier options to me are Jake Ferguson, Jatavion Sanders and Will Disley. And when I say buy, maybe these guys are on waivers, and of course you can pick them up. But in bigger leagues, they could be good trade candidates too. And then sell candidates, I'd still be selling Kyle Pitts off the name because I think there's people out there that legitimately believe that Kyle Pitts is up in the same tier as Travis Kelce, Kittle, and Bowers, which is just not true. Mark Andrews, target volume concerns with Deontay Johnson and difficult strength of schedule. Laporta off name value dealing with injury. And then the guys that are currently ranking in the top 15 that will, to me, be dropping down lower in their position are Zach Ertz, Hunter Henry, and Cole Kmet, Cole Kmet just fell out of this list for me. But these guys are still ranked relatively high, and I think you can sell them for value. All right, so that is all I got for this video. Comment any questions you have for this upcoming week, and I will feature you in the video that is coming out this Saturday for start and sit decisions. And that's all that we've got for this time. We'll see you guys next time.